Imagine this. You turn on the camera for a second and accidentally catch a shot that breaks your brain. Today, we have collected the strangest and most mystical moments that people manage to film at the very last moment. And the creepiest part is that in half of these videos, at first it seems like it is editing, until you realize it was filmed in real life. You're on the Top Facts channel. Enjoy watching. It looks like a horror movie plot, and bloody stones are about to start falling on people. But fortunately, that does not happen. It is just that after heavy rains, water mixes with dust and forms rust on the canyon's surface, which is why it looks like the stone is bleeding. Sometimes red rivers flow when there is an accident at a wine factory. Does anyone know what this is? If you have at least a version, you can share it in the comments. At first glance, there is nothing unusual in this video. But take a closer look. There is snow lying inside. The wind simply hid it under a layer of sand. Really, does it not look like a dessert sprinkled with cocoa powder? Snow under a layer of sand is preserved thanks to the peculiarities of air circulation during a sharp change in air temperature, when at night cold, denser air in the lowlands of high mountain deserts displaces warm air, and the wind brings sand, covering the snow and frost with it like a blanket. Rain in the desert is a miracle, but when downpours go on for more than 2 weeks, the desert turns into a swamp. Tropical rains caused flooding in a mountainous region of Libya. Water rushed downward and brought with it a dangerous mud flow. So much for black gold. A group of people in Algeria was looking for water in the middle of the desert, but found something better. Suddenly, instead of water, oil gushed from the spring. Unfortunately, they were not happy about the discovery. Algeria ranks 16th in the world in oil reserves. However, the country has many problems with water, so clean drinking water would have made them much happier. Some people are lucky. This is not just a natural spring, but a whole treasury. The footage was shot in Azerbaijan, not far from a mineral spring. The liquid came to the surface already heated to almost 60 degrees, and this water is truly rich. It contains magnesium, iron, phosphorus, iodine, zinc, and other beneficial chemical elements. I would spend my whole vacation right next to a real source of health. A fire fountain is not a fairy tale. You can look at one in one of the Chinese provinces. At first glance, it seems like an ordinary spring, but if you bring a lighter close, the water will catch fire. The reason is that deep underground there is natural fuel here, and in this place, it seeps to the surface through cracks together with spring water. However, the gas does not lose its properties when in contact with liquid, so tongues of flame form at the outlet. This is not the apocalypse yet, but the sky over San Francisco, filmed on September 9th, 2020. More than 2 million acres of land near the city burned due to wildfires. Rising upward, the smoke scattered the blue rays of light and let only warm ones through, so we observed the effect of a Martian day. The city's residents spent that entire day as if on another planet, without sunlight under a bright orange sky. When the sun is low and its light passes through rain clouds, the reflection of the rays colors the sky green. Our eyes perceive shades differently depending on the wavelength of light. A relative excess of green gives the sky a tint that seems unreal. There are only 800 mud volcanoes on the planet. Their formation requires special geological conditions. For example, they were found in Malaysia. This is a subsidence of the Earth's crust, groundwater, and the presence of oil and gas in the soil. And now we are watching an eruption that became the third in the volcano's history. And those few tourists who filmed this video were lucky to see it with their own eyes. In fact, it is better to stay away from mud volcanoes. Their eruptions happen only a few times a year, but every time they are a surprise and catch Taiwan's residents off guard. Being in this cauldron is dangerous, especially when a fire is raging nearby and gases easily ignite and flare up in bubbling puddles. Aliens have nothing to do with it. This landscape was created by farmers of the Canary Islands to protect plants from strong winds. They placed the plantings in stone hollows, and volcanic ash on the surface helps retain moisture, and the method works. Once this place was considered unsuitable for agriculture, but now they even grow grapes here to produce excellent wine. Tourists vacationing in the Bahamas on February 18th through February 19th, 2025, got the chance to observe mysterious fire in the sky. No, those were not St. Elmo's lights, but a very real SpaceX rocket launch. They were lucky to become witnesses, exclaiming, "Wow, a huge comet." The guy did not even realize how wrong he was. On March 25th, 2021, many residents of Oregon thought they were seeing falling stars. But in fact, at that moment, the Falcon 9 rocket was entering the atmosphere. Everyone thought they were seeing a meteor shower, but they were only watching a reunion with the planet of what people had sent into space. Emperor penguins live exclusively in Antarctica. So when an Australian family found one of them on a local beach, they were shocked. How did the penguin travel 3,400 kilometers to get there? According to scientists, among all penguins, this species is the record holder for the longest journeys. Have you ever heard of rain made of living fish? This is a real phenomenon that happens several times a year in Honduras. Scientists suggest that the cause may be strong winds or tornadoes that carry fish onto the shore. It is believed that fish can also move through water into caves, and then heavy rains push them out. In any case, finding an abundance of fresh fish in the city center is an amazing phenomenon. I would say, rare luck. I do not know whether this always happened on Thursdays or on other days of the week too. In any case, you should not hesitate. You should come with a sack. Drivers in Mason County, USA, are already used to the fact that instead of pedestrians, fish sometimes cross the road here, or rather, swim across. The highway runs between two rivers where salmon live, and the fish regularly migrate from one body of water to another during floods. So you do not have to go fishing. The fish will come out to you on its own. Remember, if fish start jumping chaotically out of the water, that is a bad sign. Residents of China's Yunnan province considered it a harbinger of an earthquake or an underwater electricity leak. But experts explain such fish behavior by the high content of chemical waste in the lake. The fish lacked oxygen to breathe, and they had to jump in search of air. It really is a bad sign when even the fish feel bad in their own water. This is what the beach of the island of Menorca looked like when hundreds of thousands of jellyfish swam to its shores. Fortunately, they are completely harmless to people. However, no one dared to enter the sea at that moment. These crustaceans live in coastal areas all over the world. For life, they need only salt water and regular tides. They are called barnacles, and they lead a sedentary lifestyle, occupying any smooth and hard surfaces. Their home can be a simple log, a pipe, a ship's bottom, or even the shell of a marine animal. That is why ships are coated with a special compound to prevent their colonies from settling. Not the most pleasant sight, right? At first glance, it looks like a creepy ritual dance of worms, but everything has an explanation. In these frames, we see mosquito larvae. They move together, following one another. Sometimes the column can get tangled and form a circle, and in that case, they resemble a single extraterrestrial organism. Another reason to shudder for those who are afraid of insects. In the spring of 2016, several regions of Madagascar were subjected to a locust invasion. There were so many larvae that, after hatching, they flooded everything around. Local authorities had to launch a large-scale campaign against the insects in order to at least somehow reduce the population of the devourers. A living statue in nature is something strange and incomprehensible to us, but for ants, it is simply a way to survive. They build their homes underground, so during floods they are forced to come to the surface. Then, the ants gather the entire colony and build a living raft on the water. They can live like this for several weeks, waiting for the water level to drop. And ants have also presumably a simpler solution for overcoming obstacles. One ant reaches the edge of a surface, and if it holds on tightly to it while hanging over the abyss, the next ant grabs the first and so on until they form a living bridge out of their bodies. In this way, ants save time and once again demonstrate that they are excellent builders whose material is always with them. Does it not seem to you that this moss is a little strange? Right, because it is not moss. These arachnids are known for having very long legs compared to their body size, and usually they gather in groups for safety, preferring a communal living arrangement to a spacious private web. They simply do not have special glands for weaving it. That is why they look more like a soft lump than an army of little spiders. Welcome to the Wild West, where tumbleweed grows in spacious deserts and fills everything around. In fact, this plant is an aggressive weed that multiplies more and more every year. Moreover, it can reach incredible sizes and block roads. For example, we are watching how it disrupted life in a small Californian town, blocking almost all routes. Bad news again for people suffering from arachnophobia. Their worst nightmare has come true. Due to rising water levels, thousands of spiders settled in the garden of a resident of New South Wales, Australia. The man did not notice this for some time, until one day he discovered that his garden was completely covered with webbing. He probably had to change his place of residence. One can safely say that now, this garden belongs to the spiders. You have probably seen this plot somewhere. A cloud of birds suddenly collapses onto someone's house, as if by an evil spell. However, there is no mysticism here, only physics. These frames, shot in Mexico, show why birds create danger every time they decide to settle on power lines. Under their weight, the wires fell to the ground and threw off their riders. The sight was so shocking that people called experts and the police to the scene. And this cloud is also formed by a flock of birds, but it is alive. Do you hear how they are screaming? And why they gather at night in one place where there is such bright lighting and where they are gathering? We are wondering. Help with hints. It turns out there is a reason why deer walk in circles. That is how animals behave when they are nervous. And by moving in a circle, they calm down and continue their meditation until the leader of the herd gives them the signal to stop. This movement also makes sense to protect weaker individuals. They are directed to the center of the circle, where they will remain safe from predators. Did you know this? Write to us in the comments if you have something to add. We have figured out the deer. Now let us find out why sheep gather into a circle. Sometimes this is explained by the instinct to follow the herd, but that is only one version. Often such behavior can arise as a consequence of stress due to being kept in a pen for too long, or an accidental infection that causes nervous disorders. However, in most cases, this is a desire to imitate their horned, northern relatives. Now we have another mystery. Why are people dressed in identical costumes, walking in circles over a large territory? The host asks them to move in chains and authorize staff to film this flash mob. Maybe you can find an explanation. Is it a research expedition or a student quest? Write in the comments below. One more mass event. The residents of this house heard noise from the roof and decided to check what was happening there. Of course, they did not expect to discover hundreds of bats under the roof tiles. It turned out that an entire colony lived there, and their nests were placed in small cracks. A little more, and they could have evicted the real residents. It is unlikely that the owners were pleased to learn that they live almost in a vampire castle. Now, stories about loners. For turtles, freezing rivers do not pose a big problem. Some individuals can spend the entire winter under ice. Turtles have an excellent ability to slow down their metabolism. The colder it is outside, the less energy and oxygen they need. At this time, turtles rely exclusively on stored energy and oxygen that is present in the water. This helps them survive without even using their lungs. If people could save their resources like that, what is the strangest thing you can see during disembarkation at an airport in Florida? Here it is. An alligator is being unloaded from a plane. Local residents say that this happens often. For example, on April 22, 2024, security guards caught a 3-meter-long individual. He probably wanted to get to Africa. This was the only case in history when people saw orcas without going into the water. It happened on a beach in Tasmania, Australia. On February 19, 2025, more than 150 orcas beached themselves at the same time. The rescue operation was delayed due to the inaccessibility of the beach, but most of the orcas were saved. However, no one voiced the reason why they massivo beached themselves. Do you often look at the sky? Interesting cinema sometimes unfolds there. Residents of China captured a real miracle. Not everyone is lucky enough to see something like this, even once in a lifetime. For iridescent clouds to appear, several conditions are needed. The sun at an angle of 58 degrees or more, clouds with ice crystals, and sunlight passing through them at a certain angle. Only with the combination of all these factors can you see this beautiful spectacle. Nature is also capable of drawing mysterious portraits, and it does it right above our heads with the help of clouds. All we can do is guess in their outlines the objects that are familiar to our consciousness. A jellyfish, a layered cake, or everyone finds a corresponding image to the extent of their imagination. How often have you had to observe cotton balls in the sky? These funny clouds are called mammatus, or udder clouds. Someone decided that their shape resembles an udder. They form under the base of thunderstorm clouds and foreshadow Silney storms with hail, because they form when descending streams of cold air meet warmer layers of the troposphere. Cotton-like lumps arise as a result of the collision of layers, with different density and uneven temperature. Remember that such dense clouds are always harbingers of a storm or a strong wind, so it is best to watch them from home. Look, does it not seem like someone burst into the sky and poked it with a spoon, breaking the film of clouds? A real hole in the sky can form when the temperature of water in clouds drops sharply, and it does not have time to freeze. Ice crystals form, and the water droplets around them begin to evaporate. That is how a hole appears. Such a rupture occurs only in clouds, but it does not always have a round and uniform shape. A storm can also be a beautiful natural phenomenon. This video, filmed in Arizona, is procrastinate proof of that. The summer oceanic monsoon combines wind, rain, and lightning. However, most likely, being in the center of such a phenomenon is not as pleasant as watching it from afar, as we are doing now. Lightning scatters in all directions during discharges that go non-stop. Is that not a horror movie in real life? A magical night on the beach with natural fluorescent lighting is not a myth. Go to China in summer or autumn, and you will be able to see a phenomenon that is romantically called blue tears here. You can observe this fantastic spectacle for several months. What is happening in this house? Is there a chemical laboratory there, or are magical rituals being performed? Smoke from the chimney rises in a vertical strua, going far into the heavens. It is unlikely to be a chemical trail. The process of water vapor condensation forms a straight line of tiny water droplets in the air. These frames are not a flood. They are irrefutable proof that an earthquake recently occurred here, because after it, soil liquefaction usually happens. The ground loses its properties, stops holding water, and begins to behave like a liquid, which leads to a large amount of water rising to the surface. An apocalyptic moment captured on camera in Bangkok. On September 24th, 2025, a sinkhole suddenly formed in the street with a diameter of 27 meters and a depth of almost 50 meters. All of this happened due to failed metro construction. The sudden collapse of the road led to the breaking of power lines and damage to water pipes. A truly terrifying sight and catastrophic consequences for the residents of the area. A ужасная sight appeared before these travelers in India. The wind turned the waterfall into an obstacle that blocked the road and frightened all drivers. Since 2019, a law has been in force in Egypt that prohibits climbing the pyramids of Giza. Violators face a fine or a ban on entering the country. This rule applies not only to Egyptian citizens, but also to any tourists. So, if you plan something like that, first study the laws of the country. This is how our episode turned out. If you liked it and you want to see the next part or something similar, write about it in the comments and hit the like button. Subscribe to our channel, and very soon a new episode will come out on another interesting topic. And for now, watch one of our previous videos that have already appeared on your screen.